Hey, I'm David.
And I'm Brandon.
And we're here today to talk to you about...
our top 10 games of 2013.
Not top 10 games that came out in 2013.
Just the ones that we've played.
And enjoyed.
In 2013.
So enjoy.
Alright.
Okay, I'm going to get us started. This first game, it did come out this year. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think it did. And that is Ni no Kuni. You know, I had a lot of fun with this whenever it first came out. I know a lot of people are probably thinking, well, why isn't it like your number 3 game? Well, because we're not just doing stuff that came out this year. It's pretty much why.
What is it? Tell us about it.
It's a role-playing game. I guess you'd call it a Japanese-style role-playing game by Level 5. The guys who did like Dragon Quest VIII.
Oh,
some
nice.
games like that. Rogue Galaxy on the PS2.
Right. You're more versed in the modern stuff than I am. So.
Fair. In this game, you play as... I can't remember the kid's name. You play as a little kid. Story. You get sucked into a new world where you have to basically save your mother's life.
It sounds very Little Nemo-ish in the premise.
I guess kinda, actually. I never really thought of that. Anyway,
okay, so my list is slightly different from his. In discussing this premise, we both kind of took it in different directions. So there's a lot of flashbacky stuff going on in my list. And so my number 10, which I don't have because a lot of the things that I played this year were lent or borrowed, is The Force Unleashed for the Wii. Do you remember when The Force Unleashed came out?
No.
No. Okay. I'm a big Star Wars guy, and I used to be really involved in that scene, in that culture. And when The Force Unleashed came out, it was a big deal for Star Wars nerds. And in my circle of friends, I was the idiot who bought the Wii. So I was the one who was experiencing the Wii version of this game. Because the PS3 and the Xbox 360 versions had all of the special, whatever, gameplay mechanic stuff that was all touted for a year. Well, the Wii didn't have any of that. It just had a Wii remote.
You mean just like every other cross-platform release
pretty much
for that generation?
So the Wii version was the crap version. But the control scheme was interesting. This was before the Kinect and all that crap was around. Mm-hmm. And what's cool about this game, once you've beaten it, you've developed all of these kick-ass force powers. Then you go back and play through it, and you're like God of the Star Wars universe because you retain everything that you gained in your first playthrough. So it's one of those games that it's great to play twice.
So it's got like a new game plus type aspect.
Essentially. It's kind of like press B to start a new adventure kind of a situation. But anyway, that's why it's number 10, because you only play it twice and then there's no point in picking it up again.
Okay, let's go on. My number 9 is going to be Need for Speed Rivals on the PS4. I went PS4 so far this generation. Released first. I don't know. Microsoft, E3.
Some
whatever.
things went down.
Yeah. So I have a PS4. I've always loved racing games. I've always loved Need for Speed games. I like the kind of more arcade racer versus the sim, like your Gran Turismo, stuff like that. Forza. You know, honestly, it's probably in the number 9 spot just because it's on the PS4. I mean, is that terrible to say?
No.
But it was fun. And I know it's on the PS3, Xbox, you know. It's a
but you said
cross-generational.
You feel like it was an improvement upon the PS3.
Oh yeah, definitely.
version.
I played it on the PS3. The PS4's graphics power really shined through to me in this game. Specifically, you know, what makes it kind of different is that I think it's the first time that a Need for Speed game has ever kind of been open world. You can jump in and out of cooperative play.
Right, you were telling me about that.
I guess it's not co-op. Like, you know, if you wanted to be a cop and I wanted to be a racer, then you could just jump in my game at any time and try to take me out.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
Okay, so number 9 on my list, also a game I don't have here with me today, is Rayman II. This is another one of those games that's kind of a flashback to my childhood. When my parents would buy me games, I feel like my video gaming as a child was a little different from other kids because I didn't have the Nintendo Power subscription and all that. And so all of my games were either hand-me-downs from relatives or my parents would randomly buy me whatever thing was on sale. So I never had Rayman. And my parents one time came home and as a surprise gift gave me Rayman II. And I had no idea that, like, what was going on in the original game. And this is a direct sequel that picks up from the first game.
So it's not like Mario 2?
No, you're straight up thrown into the story arc from the first game with really no backstory. But it's a fantastic game. It's just a 3D platformer. It's one of those collect all of the things kind of games. So once you've beaten a level multiple times, you may miss one little thing that you needed to collect, so you have to go back. So it's got a lot of replay value. Just a fun PlayStation title. I think it's on the N64 too. Just a fun one.
My number 8 is actually on the DS, and it is, now I butcher this every time I say it, Valkyrie Profile Covenant of the Plume. It's either, is it Valkyrie? Valkyrie?
It's a heck of a name.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, -1 gamer card, I guess. This is a DS game. I'm not sure. So, okay, 2008. So it's getting up there. I didn't play it until 2013. It's a Square Enix game, strategy RPG. I haven't played all of the Valkyrie Profile games. So I was a little hesitant to pick it up. I looked online, read some info, and it really has nothing to do with any of the other games. It's a standalone title. It's a strategy RPG.
Ugh.
I know.
Not my favorite.
Well, but there are some cool twists in it.
Okay.
Basically, NPCs in this game that join your party, you can sacrifice, essentially, if you get stuck.
Okay, that's kind of
morbid. You fill them with this, godlike power. They do their stuff, and then they die. And everyone you kill affects the storyline.
Number 8. One that I came to really love in 2013 is called The Art of Balance, and it's on the WiiWare store, which what's going on with the WiiWare store? Are they still selling stuff on it now that they're actually promoting the Wii U after
Well, I think
a year?
I saw someone in RGS trying to unload an old gift certificate, so hopefully to whoever bought that, you can still use it.
The Art of Balance, hopefully it's available on the Wii U. We should check that out.
If it's on the Wii, who cares?
It's a cool game. It's one of those, it's just a puzzle solving game basically, but what you have is this dish of water and a platform, and you're balancing things on top of each other. And it has to stay for 3 seconds, and you win and you get to advance the stage. So the further along you get, the more intricacies there are to the different pieces that you're stacking. Some might break, or some can only hold a load of 2 pieces before they break. That sort of thing. So it's one of those games where you can put it on, you have friends, you have cocktail hour, whatever, drinks, party, snacks, and people can just pick it up, balance a few things, walk away, go join a conversation. It's just a fun, it's like an interactive screensaver.
Oh boy. For number 7, I chose Super Ghouls and Ghosts, and this is actually on the Game Boy Advance. I just don't have the box for it. It's the first time in my life that I have totally beaten the correct way, no cheating, no anything, a Ghouls and Ghosts game. Okay, so I played it on the Game Boy Advance because I have a backlit Game Boy Advance that I purchased last year, I think. So laying in bed, beat a level a night. It's really hard, and I like that. It's a fun game. I would probably recommend playing it actually on the Game Boy Advance because I've played it on most of the consoles that it's available for. Not just Ghouls and Ghosts, but all of the various, I guess, Ghost games, if you want to call them that.
Is the Repro Box thing?
Oh yeah, that's like a DS case. You've seen it.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, I like it. I would check it out. It's super cheap. I'm pretty sure on eBay. I think I got mine for like $5. If you've never beat the game, try it on this. Good time.
Good time. My number 7 is Mr. Gimmick. Are you familiar with Mr. Gimmick?
I've played Mr. Gimmick.
Mr. Gimmick is awesome. And I only really got into it in 2013 when I started buying reproduction carts. And hoping that I can get my repro of Mr. Gimmick soon. I've finally sourced the cart. There's only one cart that you can use for
What
a
is
donor
it?
cart. It's Return of the Joker, I believe.
That's not actually incredibly easy to find.
No, it's not. Phil, one of our RGS members, acquired one for me at Retropalooza this year.
Cool.
So it's a Sunsoft cart, and it's a specific chipset. And this Mr. Gimmick can only be made into a repro on that. So Mr. Gimmick is, like, have you played Super Meat Boy?
Yes.
Okay, it's like
Fantastic game.
It's kind of like that. Early 90s NES title. It was released in Scandinavia and Japan. And it's hard. I mean, Super Meat Boy is about the best way I can describe it. It's one of those games where you're puzzle-solving individual stages as you progress through. And each stage you learn something that will be valuable later on as far as the control scheme or game mechanics, things like that. It's very forgiving in the beginning, but what's cool about it is all the stuff that's going on in the foreground and the background. They really made use of the graphics chipset on the NES, and I really like games that are a beautiful experience on the NES in addition to being fun, because as you make fun of me for my NES collecting sometimes, most of the NES games are terrible, and they are ugly, and they have bland color palettes. So it's nice to see something that has great gameplay, and is an experience, and is pretty to look at all at the same time.
Number 6 for me is I guess it's a digital-only game, technically. It's on the PlayStation 4. You guys probably know what I'm going to say, Rezogun. Rezogun is...
I did not know you were going to say that.
No? Surprise! Anyway, have you seen any video or
I
anything
have
on
no
Rezogun?
idea what you're talking about.
Okay, well, Rezogun is basically a shooter.
Okay.
Okay, and it is a 2D shooter. You basically fly around a world. You get power-ups, you know, like if you're playing like Gradius or something like that. You get power-ups, you know, you have 3 ships to choose from at the beginning of the game.
Okay.
You progress through levels. There's an end boss at each level. But what's really well, and you save humans. I don't know what the premise of the story is, but I would assume like aliens captured humans and you're saving them. But it can get really frantic, especially on harder difficulties.
Okay.
And what's really amazing about Rezogun are the graphics. And it's a 2.5D game, but there's so much going on the screen at one time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not a graphical, you know, it's not like the plane is super high detail. It's not like you're flying around in something from,
Right.
you know, GTA 5.
Right.
You know, but whenever you beat a boss, the boss explodes. And you can have thousands and thousands of particle effects just flying over the screen.
What system is this on?
Oh, it's on the PS4.
PS4.
Exclusive, I think, still, to the PS4.
Alright, my number 6 is another retro throwback. It is GTA Vice City, but on iOS. Did you know this was on iOS?
No.
They have several GTA games available on iOS now.
How's the control scheme?
You would think it would be terrible, wouldn't you?
Yes.
It is not. It is actually pretty cool. Now, learning to drive the car can be difficult because you're using... There's an accelerator, like a foot pedal, and there's the brake, which also acts as reverse, and then you use side-to-side swiping action to drive it, like to turn corners and stuff.
That sounds awful.
It takes a little getting used to, but the running scheme is actually pretty good. It's on the left side of the screen, you use your thumb and basically guide him along. I'll let you play it later. We're currently recording with the thing that I play it on. But it's just a direct port of Vice City. And Vice City was my favorite PS2 era GTA game. And being able to... It's one of those things where you're never going to sit down in this day and age and just sit and play through Vice City. But, you know, it's like a subway game. You're on the train for 15 minutes. You want to play through a mission. You can play GTA.
But we live in Oklahoma.
I know.
Number 5.
We're halfway through. Number 5.
Number 5 was released on disc, but I learned about PlayStation Plus and how awesome it was when I was forced to buy it with my PS4. And
Tell us about PlayStation Plus.
And well, they give you free games. And I was an Xbox Live subscriber for years. And one look at the offerings from PlayStation Plus kind of piqued my interest. And I've been playing a lot of PlayStation 3 since they're not really releasing cool stuff on the PS4 right now. So I got it. It's cool. The first full game that I downloaded happened to be the free game that was out, I guess, last month for download that I liked. And it was Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. I'd heard about the game. I never picked it up, you know. There were some other things coming out around the same time. I think like Witcher 2 came out close to that.
Yeah, that would overshadow it.
Yeah, so I'd heard a lot of good things. I had some friends that said, hey, you need to check it out. Well, I never did. I was like, well, shit, it's free, so why not? The original release, I know, had some pretty big complaints, like with the lack of fast traveling and stuff, and a pretty massive, RPG.
Yeah.
I think there was fast traveling, but it was really few and far between. It was really annoying. Well, with the kind of reiteration of the game, the Dark Arisen package, which was like a DLC pack.
Okay.
They packaged it all together.
Was it a
DLC?
I was going to say, was it a paid DLC pack? Because that would suck.
I don't think it was a DLC.
You want to be able to fast forward your game?
They re-released the game.
Give us $10.
They re-released the game. I don't know. But one thing that really kind of struck me as cool is I watched a little preview, and it showed a character climbing on a big, huge boss and basically, you know, chopping its head off. And that's totally reminiscent of Shadow of the Colossus, which was one of my favorite PS2 games. That's an epic game. But so I thought, hey, I'll give it a shot. And it's fun. It's a good game. The story's okay. It's pretty generic. You got your character creation, blah, blah, blah. You can do that in like every game now. So it's not a big draw. But yeah, I had a good time. Probably the most unique feature outside of kind of the combat and being able to, kind of climb and whatnot is the use of pawns. Okay. A pawn in this game is essentially a character that you build that you cannot directly control during battle, but will fight alongside you. Okay, it's pretty standard RPG stuff,
right?
So you have your guy. Well, you can go into like an alternate kind of universe if you're online, or I guess technically if you're not, and you can hire out other pawns. And if you're online, you can hire your friend's pawn that they made. You can hire, someone that you don't know's pawn. Some are free. Some cost, in-game currency to rent for a time to help you out with your battles. Was it totally awesome? Is it a cool idea that could definitely be capitalized in the future? 100%.
Yeah, it sounds like something to build on.
Yeah, anyway. For sure. And I kind of got that out of this game. They were testing the waters with a few things that pretty much worked out in the end. I do think that there were some problems with it when it came out. I think it came out in 2012, I want to say. I'm not sure. But the re-release, I think, came out this summer.
This one's going to be kind of short. There's not much to say about it. But my number 5 is something that we experienced for the first time at PRGE in Portland this year. They had a huge section dedicated to Atari Homebrew. And do you remember playing Zippy the Porcupine?
I do.
Zippy the Porcupine is a really impressive, I guess you would say, clone of Sonic the Hedgehog on the Atari 2600. And we're going to roll some B-roll of this so you can actually see how this looks. It's insane what they were able to do with the 2600, and it's kind of exciting if they can do something like this with the 2600, a pretty close to accurate port on an obviously not blast processing system. What the homebrew guys are going to be able to come up with in the future. It's a cool tech demo of what the Atari 2600 was actually capable of. And that's why I included it in this list, because it's kind of cool that this homebrew scene, even in the Atari 2600 space, is still really innovating.
Number 4 for me, and once again, I'll probably take some shit for this, but I'm going to go with The Last of Us. You know, if you haven't played The Last of Us, you should. It's a great game. It's probably got the most mature storyline for a video game that's a mainstream video game that I've ever played. And whenever I say mature, I don't mean that, you know, everybody's saying every 3 seconds, which has been, you know, the stereotypical M rating, or, you know, having sex in the game. You know, that's not what I mean whenever I say mature story. It's a story that deals with basically a virus that breaks loose and mutates people. And the mature aspect kind of comes in whenever you have to start, you know, killing people and killing these monsters, if you want to kill the monsters or if you want to kill the people. I kind of found it more enjoyable to kill the people.
See, I haven't really seen anything on this one. I know this is the one that you've talked almost the most about this year. So clearly it's good. Is it a first-person shooter?
No, it's a third-person, I would say, adventure game, action-adventure game. It's definitely not a role-playing game. It's definitely not a, you know, run-and-gun shooter. It's not like Gears of War.
Okay.
You know, it's. See, what does it remind me of?
I think that's more conducive to the story elements that they're bringing to the table there, though.
Yeah, it definitely is. The story is I don't know. It's hard to call it deep, but it's intriguing. And I'm not gonna lie, the reason that it's at number 4 is because there was probably a 3 or 4 hour kind of slump for me in the story, and I played it all the way through. I wrote a little review on it after I beat it, and I wanted to do that, which is why I played it, you know, immediately whenever I bought it. But there was probably a 3 or 4 hour slump where I was kind of bored, where the story hadn't, you know, it wasn't really progressing anymore, and I was kind of just killing stuff.
Yeah.
But the graphics are awesome. You know, it's a pretty game. It's by Naughty Dog, who did like Uncharted.
Okay.
And those games have always looked pretty impressive.
All right, so my number 4 takes us back to the DOS days. I mentioned earlier I've got a DOS emulator running on my Mac now, which is fun for Incredible Machine, but it's also fun for a game called Crime Fighter. Have you ever played Crime Fighter?
I've never played Crime Fighter.
Crime Fighter was GTA before GTA was GTA.
Okay.
So basically what happens is it's kind of like a board game, honestly. It's a lot more fun if you play it with friends, because it's like a role switching kind of thing. So you start out the game, you've just been released from prison, and you've got this map that you can traverse around either on foot or by car. And the goal is to become the crime lord of this area that you're in. And so when you play with friends, you're each taking turns, and you're each trying to climb up the criminal ladder faster than each other. There's various different interesting gameplay elements. There's different sections where you're forced to make the decision to kidnap children and leave them in hotel rooms, and you've got to remember to pay the rent on the hotel rooms, or the police will find the child inside.
That's a pretty involved gaming concept.
You have to find...
do I pay my rent so the cops don't find my kidnapped children in the basement?
Well, you can rent multiple rooms, so you can have multiple kids all over the map.
Perfect.
There's, when you're kidnapping a kid, if you get caught, you might have to fight an army of grandmas armed with AK-47s.
That's awesome.
There's various elements where you're having to escape from the police or steal things from the loading dock. It's really involved and kind of messed up for a DOS-era game. And that's the reason I included it in this list, because when I installed the DOS emulator and started playing through this old stuff again, I remembered Crime Fighter. And I had no recollection of how truly horrible some of the things in this game are.
So how old were you whenever you first played Crime Fighter?
Early middle school. The guy actually re-released it in the early 2000s, and now it's freeware. So anyone can go and get yourself a DOS emulator, and you can play it without any fear of litigation.
Number three game that I played in 2013. Bioshock Infinite. Once again, you know, everyone's going to be like, well, if that's number 3, then what the hell's going to be number 2 or number 1?
Right, because this is the second most talked about thing that I heard you talk about.
Pretty much. You know, between these two games, you know, it was a big toss-up for most of the year. I can't even do this. Between which one of these games was going to be Game of the Year, yada yada. They're both amazing. The reason that Bioshock Infinite is above The Last of Us, in my opinion, is because I actually never really got that little lull period in the game like I did with The Last of Us. The graphics are beautiful. The story is amazing. You don't really have to have played Bioshock 1 and 2. I've never beat Bioshock 1, and I had no problem following the story in this game. There are some kind of little throwback things to some of the previous titles, but it's nothing that's going to break the game for you. You're not going to hear something and be like, oh my god, I have to quit playing the game because I don't understand. It's nothing like that. It's a totally new story.
I've heard that this is a story that you can't really talk about unless you and the person you're talking about it with have both played it. So,
right. The ending's pretty intense, and it's pretty incredible in my opinion. And yeah, I don't think I've spoiled it for anyone yet. And I'm glad that no one spoiled it for me, because I actually didn't play it for several months after it was released.
Right.
There was a lot of hype around it, and the hype was warranted.
My number 3. Goldeneye. I actually have a copy of a game here.
Holy crap.
Yeah. Because I own this one. I shout out to one of the guys in the group, Drew. Thanks for hooking me up with this. We did a little trade action. So, finally reacquired Goldeneye this year. When I moved a few years ago, I sold almost every gaming thing I owned.
That was dumb.
It sucked. But I had to pay to move. So I reserved all of my NES games, sold everything else. So I'm in the process of reacquiring the few things that I'm actually going to play. I'm definitely not a completionist when it comes to N64 stuff. I don't really feel like I need to talk about GoldenEye because everyone watching this has played it. I was just really excited to get back into it in 2013. He came over and tripped over my N64 one time and said, "Oh, hey, it's really nice to see you getting into something other than NES games." So I feel like that was a win in my case.
Number 2, and probably the most, not probably, the most recently released game in my pile is going to be A Link Between Worlds, the new Zelda game on the 3DS. This is, if you don't know...
It still smells like fresh plastic. Yeah, it's got that new game scent.
It's like crack. You want to hold it?
Ooh, it tingles, too.
I know. Now, if you don't know, this is part 2 of A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo, which is my favorite Zelda game.
Basic reading ability is needed to fully enjoy this game.
I can see that.
That's amazing.
You know, I haven't beaten this game. I have one more castle to beat before I can basically fight the final boss. You know how Zelda is. You can probably guess about where I'm at, or you've probably already beaten it if you bought the game. I've been busy.
I have heard that it's a quick game to beat.
It is. It's pretty simple, and I really debated even putting this up this high. I kind of originally had it around 4 or 5 area.
Yeah.
But it's super nostalgic. And the fact that it's on a handheld and it's not super complicated is kind of nice, because I play my handheld games at night before I go to bed.
Right.
Because I don't really like reading it,
Well, it's similar to the GTA on the iOS that I was mentioning.
You can pick it up,
it's just
you can
a
mindless.
It is. Mindless thing.
The dungeons aren't extremely long. Like the Super Nintendo version of of Zelda, it can take you a while to get through some of the later dungeons. This is a little more, I guess it's a little more, I don't want to say puzzle oriented, but you can do new things with your character that you've never been able to do, which sounded really gimmicky whenever I first heard about this game, and I thought that they totally ruined it. But you can actually flatten yourself up against a wall.
Oh, so that's what the graffiti art on the back is about.
Exactly. Like right here. Graffiti art. But you can, push a button and essentially stick to a wall and flatten out and then traverse kind of the terrain. You can walk on one plane, let's say, given there's no obstacles in the way. In these dungeons in the world, it's pretty interesting. A lot of people have said it's not gimmicky, it's all good. It's a little gimmicky, but you know what it's better than? Any of the other Zelda games that came out on the DS, like Spirit Tracks. No, thank you.
My number 2, this one will also be short, Fire and Ice. Now this one is a little hard to come by at this point on the NES. I did not include this for any of those kind of reasons. But this is actually a fun game, so whatever. Don't buy a cart. Emulate it. I don't care. It's another one of those pick it up and play it, puzzle-solving, gimmick kind of games. So basically, you're a little wizard guy, and you can make ice cubes. And you have to put out fires and kill your enemies with those ice cubes. But the problem comes in your environment. You've got blocks in the way, and you've got to figure out how to navigate the blocks with your ice cubes to, whatever, kill everything. And it's one of those games where somebody else is playing it, and you know the answer, but they're trying to figure it out. And so I think that's what makes it fun, because it's one of those games that's fun to watch because you're sitting there going, why are you doing the things that you're doing? And you have to reset the puzzle because you'll get trapped somewhere and you can't get back out. And it's just one of those fun games. So, Fire and Ice, number 2. I've really been into it in the last couple of months.
Let's move on to our number 1 game that we have played in 2013. Do you want to go first this time?
Yeah, I'll go first because I'm assuming mine is going to be underwhelming compared to what you've been doing.
No, I don't know. Probably not.
Okay, so back in the day, we were all familiar with Sonic the Hedgehog, right? So you have Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic 2, where you get to play as Sonic and your kid brother can play as Tails, kind of.
That kid you don't like that lives on the street?
Yeah, you can be Tails. And then there was Sonic 3 and Sonic Knuckles, and Sonic and Knuckles had the lock-in technology. So
which was awesome.
Crazy awesome.
Whenever we were little kids, I'm sure
being
you
able to
freaked out
play
too.
as Knuckles in Sonic 2 was life-changing.
Yeah.
Right. So my friend had all of these games. I would go to his house to play that stuff. I just had the first Sonic game. And I brought it over, and I was like, let's play as Knuckles in Sonic 1. Can't do it. Doesn't work.
Thanks, Sega.
Apparently, from what I've read, the deal was they didn't like the way the color palette in the first Sonic game looked with Knuckles in it, so they just disabled that functionality. Now, it does unlock some other, side game thing that you can play, but you can't play as Knuckles in the original Sonic the Hedgehog game. Until 2005.
Uh-oh.
When the ROM hacking community figured out how to inject Knuckles into Sonic 1.
I like those guys.
Those guys are great. So, I have actually been playing that version lately because as a child, Knuckles was my favorite Sonic character. Now, the game's not optimized for Knuckles, like in some of the zones when you climb really high up, in like Sonic 2, there's extra 1-ups and stuff.
Right.
That you can There's none of that. But it adds a really interesting gameplay mechanic. And it kind of refreshes a game that we're all familiar with. We all know how it works. And you can use all of Knuckles' abilities. So you can climb things, you can do the flying thing, and you can use the spin dash thing.
Now, does it make the game any easier? Does it actually... Because I know on some of the levels, obviously, in
in
Sonic
some ways,
2 and 3, Knuckles just made it, a joke.
In some ways it's easier, in some ways it's harder. Because Knuckles can't jump as high as Sonic.
Right.
So there are some things that you can struggle to get to, like a power-up or whatever, or just getting from one platform to another. So you may have to backtrack and fly over to get onto some platforms that Sonic would have been able to just jump to.
Have you run into anything in the hack where you get stuck totally because of that?
No. I mean, because you can climb out of most situations. I don't know. It's not optimized, so it's not like you're going to go through and find something really cool that you never knew about. And in some zones, you can just fly through the entire thing without even seeing an enemy. So there's that. But it's a cool refresher.
Oh, for sure.
And it's being able to go back and re-experience a game that was one of my favorite games as a child in a way that I always wanted to, but I was always pissed at Sega for not allowing me to do, is kind of cool. And so that's why it made my number 1.
I'll say it again. I love the ROM hackers.
Yeah.
There's some good stuff.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for doing what I can't.
Okay. My number 1 is a game that came out several years ago. Okay. A lot of you guys out there who know me personally are going to know what this game is. I've talked about it a lot since it was released. I recently played through it again, as in, beat it yesterday. Okay. It's just a fantastic game. It's by From Software, and that game is Dark Souls. Okay. You know, the game was released, and it was released with probably, it was a lot of anticipation. You know, there was a game that came out before it by From Software called Demon's Souls.
Okay.
And I'd purchased it. I'd played, you know, just enough to say, this looks cool. It's really, really hard, and I'll get around to it. Well, I never got around to it. So this game came out, and I bought it day one. Had it pre-ordered, got the collector's edition or 10 edition, whatever it was. I think it, you know, Prepare to Die edition, maybe. And I popped it in. I died probably 4 or 5 times before I even got to the world where you start the game. And I was like, wow, this is going to be fun. There's very little story in the game that's told to you directly. There are a lot of NPCs in the game that you can talk to kind of get bits and pieces and kind of piece it together. It reminds me of an NES game. You know? Back in the, not a specific NES game. I mean, if I had to choose one, I'd probably say Zelda, I guess. The first Legend of Zelda game.
Yeah.
In a kind of a weird way. Maybe mixed with some Castlevania, actually. But, you know, back then you kind of had to create your own story. Or read the book. You know, you could read the book and get just a little bit of backstory. And that's kind of what they did with this game. The only difference being that every item that you find, for the most part, like every piece of armor that you pick up, every weapon that you pick up, there's text. You can go through the menu and you can read the text for each individual piece.
It kind of reminds me of what they did with Skyrim with the big like book that you could get with all the like world history.
Right. But yeah. it's all in game.
That's cool.
And you know, Skyrim has a lot of like cutscenes, kind of, and you know, they tell you the story. Like, you're kind of driven down this path, and you know what's going on by the end of the game. You know why you're killing, who you're killing. In Dark Souls, you really don't. Unless you want to. You know, beyond that, the game is beautiful. You know, the worlds, well, you're on one world, but there are different, you know, areas, and they're all pretty different. For the most part, they look really amazing. There are a couple levels in there, if you want to call them levels, a couple of areas that, you know, maybe they didn't spend quite as much time on, and, you know, maybe you can tell. Like I said, I've beat it 5 times since it came out now, and I really didn't start to see it until I got good enough at killing the enemies to kind of start really paying attention to some of the details. But it's an amazing game, and it stands up after, you know, several years, and for me, 5 playthroughs.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the replayability.
Yeah, I love it, you know, and every time that I play it, I notice something different in the game. It's a very difficult game. It's an RPG, if you don't know anything about it. You know, you start out the game in kind of like a prison for, let's call it zombies, because if you haven't played the game or know anything about it, I'm going to use terminology that you don't understand. So you're kind of like a zombie undead person, and you're in this prison. You get out of the prison, you get taken to a different part of the world, where basically the gods live. You know, and your job is basically to go around and kill all these bosses, which are these gods or demigods or dragons. And it's a lot of fun. It can be very frustrating for sure. Whenever you first start the game, the first thing I did was go into this graveyard area. It's essentially an open world. You can go to almost any area immediately. And I came on these skeletons, and they just said, boop, and I died. And so I went back, and boom, dead. I blocked with my shield, boom, dead. So I was like, okay, well, this game, it's not just difficult, it's totally unfair.
Yeah. Until
I realized where I was supposed to go.
Well, it straight up says on the back, prepare to die.
Oh, yeah.
So...
Oh, yeah. And you will. The learning curve on this game is pretty incredible. But once you get it, it's not, you know, it's not unbeatable.
I like to see the Bandai logo.
Heck yeah.
It's nice to see that still kicking around.
Yeah, why not? if they're gonna help out with games like Dark Souls,
Right on.
they deserve it.
I like that.
But
Nice. Ties it all together.
Yeah, this game's available on the PS3, the 360, and the PC. If you haven't played it and you have a nice PC, I would probably recommend that because there are probably like 2 small portions of the game where there's a little bit of lag. They've done a lot of patches, I think 5 maybe, since it's released, and it's helped out quite a bit. But, you know, even for the PS3, there's some points where the draw distance and things like that are, they're just expanded maybe a little too far.
Yeah.
I don't want to say too far because you need to see what's going on, but, you know, there's a lot of pretty stuff in the game, so it can slow down a little bit. There's an expansion pack that came out for it. It's pretty good. If you're into the story of the game, and you go through it and you learn all these details, you definitely want to check out the DLC. But it's probably my favorite game that's come out this generation, and maybe my favorite game that came out in the last 2 generations. Alright guys, well that pretty much wraps up our top 10 games that we played in 2013. We didn't go into a lot of detail on some of these games because honestly some of them are kind of old, and some of them are probably games that 99% of the people watching this video have already played. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to leave them below. Feel free to make a video. If you want to give us the top 10 games that you played in 2013,
give us a response.
Yeah, we'd love to see it.
All right.
Take care.
Until next time.